Hello friends, I am back with our next art lesson and I wanted to talk to you guys about the types of art projects that I've been choosing for you guys. So far through our remote learning art lessons, we have done art projects that operate a little bit more like crafts, such as our dino puppets. We have learned about artists with our project that we did last week. We have learned about different art styles. This week we're going to be learning about a cultural art style. And so the reason that I'm choosing projects like this is because of the way that I work in class. My third graders, we always learn about different artists. My fourth graders, cultural projects, my fifth graders, art styles. So I wanted to make sure that as you guys are completing these projects, we're kind of hitting on all of the different subjects that I like to teach you guys in class as well. So this week we're going to be learning about a cultural style of art called Notan, which is a Japanese style of art making that focuses on kind of the play of light versus dark, as well as positive and negative space and their interaction with each other. So this project is a really neat project and incorporates just very simple materials. All you're going to need for this project is some white paper, colored paper. I'm actually using black paper because I really like the way that the white and the black have a high contrast, but if you want to use a different color, you are more than welcome to do that. Then you're going to need glue. Glue stick will work the best, but liquid glue will work just as well. Scissors, and then some kind of a drawing utensil. I'm going to use a thin black marker simply because I'm using black paper and it won't show up at the end a lot and I won't have much to erase. Now, let me show you an example of a Notan artwork that I've created. We're going to do ours a little bit different than this. We're going to be using a small square of colored paper versus a large rectangle, but it's going to have the same idea. So if you look here, you can see how I have a lot of different shapes that have been cut out, but then pasted right on the opposite side in a very mirror image type way. So we're also going to be focusing on using a lot of symmetry, mirror symmetry with this project. The cool thing about this project, we are not wasting anything. Every single piece of paper that you cut out, you are going to use again. So nothing is wasted. Everything is glued back down. There is a bit of making sure you're keeping up with things, and you have to be very careful when you're cutting. But the end result looks super neat. So we're going to be working with a Notan. Like I said, it's Japanese style of art that focuses on that play of light and dark, the interaction of positive and negative space. Remember, positive space is a space that an object occupies, while negative space is a space around an object. All right, so for instance, I consist of positive space. The space around me is negative space. So in an artwork, if you're creating something, you're kind of looking here at your positive space, in this case being the black, and your negative space being the white, and you can kind of see the way that they're interacting with each other. All right, guys, so go ahead and grab those materials. Remember, paper, white paper, colored paper, scissors, glue, and something to draw with, and we will get started. All right, guys, so let's get started on our Notan artwork. So as you can see here, I have my white paper, which is what I'm going to be gluing everything to. This is just a plain white piece of computer paper, nothing special. You can use another color if you don't have white, but white will give you that high contrast that you're looking for. It will allow you to really focus on that play of light and dark. And then I have a black piece of construction paper. Again, if you don't have black, you can use another piece of paper. Ultimately, you could color a white piece of paper with markers or crayons and then use that, would be another way to complete this if you don't have multiple colored paper. So remember, there's always an option of some way that you can work with your materials if you don't have everything that I do. All right, now the first thing that we need to do is we need to cut down this black piece of paper. Ultimately, what we want is to end up with a little square of paper like this. All right, so the easiest way to go about doing that is to start by folding your black paper in half vertically, or hot dog style. So walk one edge over to the other side as neatly as you can. Make sure those edges are lined up nice and neatly. And then cut this paper in half with your scissors. Again, cut it as neatly as you can. You want your edges to be as straight as possible. All right, so now I have a half piece of paper. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a square. All right, so I don't need this whole piece. I just want to have a little square in the center. The easiest way to determine a square and make sure that you actually have a square, not a rectangle, is to bring the corner of your paper like this up to the opposite side, and you can fold it if you don't want to fold it because you don't want the edge. I'm not going to fold mine completely. I'm just going to kind of hold that edge down, and I'm going to mark with my marker where that line would go. And then I'm going to cut along that line. And then we end up with this nice little square. All right, guys, so now that we have our square, we're going to place it in the center of our paper. And I know it's hard to see because mine is not, you can't quite see the entire paper. So I'm gonna turn my paper horizontally. Really, it does not matter whether your paper is horizontal or vertical because we're going to be using all four edges of that square. Now, once you have that square in the center, we're not gluing this down yet because we're gonna need to be able to pick it up to cut pieces out. But what we do wanna do is we want to mark the four corners. So I'm going to just carefully mark all four corners of my black paper exactly where I want them. This is going to help us as we go to cut pieces of our Notan. It's going to knock out a couple steps that can be more difficult. So I've marked where I want my square to be. That way when I go to place it back, I know exactly where I want everything to be. I know where all my edges are. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our designs. Now, you can make any kind of design in this square that you want. It can be organic shapes, geometric shapes. Remember, geometric shapes are those shapes with names, circles, triangles, hearts, diamonds. Think shapes that have rules. If I tell you the name of a shape, you're going to know what it is. Whereas an organic shape is a much more natural shape. It tends to have wiggles and waves and turns to it. It would be a shape that you wouldn't necessarily be able to name. The one rule is that all of your shapes, all of your designs must start and end on a flat edge, okay? So you can't just draw a circle in the middle of this square and be able to cut it out. You have to start it on the edge and you have to end that design on the edge. If you're going to be creating a geometric shape, say you want to do a heart, the best thing to do is to complete only half of it onto that black paper, because ultimately when you cut it out, you're going to be flipping the paper over, and that's going to give you your full geometric shape. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to start with a heart. Now I have a black marker here, so I might have to get a different color so that you can actually see what mine looks like. So give me just... All right, so I have a lighter color pencil simply so that you can see what I'm drawing. While you're doing this, a pencil, a black marker, anything that you're using will work. So you don't have to do a lighter color, but if it will make it easier for you, then by all means, go ahead and do that. So let's say I want to start by making a heart on this side. I'm only going to draw half of the heart. Okay. Then I'm going to actually do a double or triple cut. So what that means is instead of just cutting this out and flipping it over so that we have a very large opening, I'm going to draw another heart shape in the inside and then one more right here. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of design my entire square. Again, anything that you do will work, but you must start and end your lines on a flat edge. Okay, don't just draw something in the center here. It won't work. All right, so let's say I'm going to do an organic shape over here. And let's see. Maybe get some points in over here, kind of like a star. You can make large shapes, smaller shapes, completely up to you. I'm going to do that double cut right here. So I'm going to draw a shape within a shape. All right, so now I have my design. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and very carefully, I'm going to cut out one of my designs. I'm only cutting one out at a time. That way I don't have to keep up with a ton of little shapes all at the same time. Okay, so I've cut that heart out. But now I have these two other lines inside here. So I'm going to cut those out as well, because ultimately I'm cutting every single line I drew. I have to cut those out. And then one last. Cut very, very carefully. Allow your hand to pivot the paper around instead of the scissors. It will make it easier. Oops. See, so that you can see me cutting. All right, so now I have my shapes. If I were to put them back over in this area, they would kind of fit together. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip the outer most part out. I'm going to line this back up on those edges. That's why we created those edges, so that we can tell exactly where this is supposed to go. That fits there. The middle piece is going to touch right back on that edge. And then the center piece so all the edges should touch one another, just like that. So what happens is you have this cut over here. That was that second cut. It flips it over kind of like a mirror image. So all you're doing is flipping it over. You do want to make sure that you have flipped it, because if you were to leave it this way, obviously those edges don't match. So you're just taking that piece and turning it over and lining it up as carefully as you can. The second piece stays in place as if it were never cut out. And then again, that center little piece touches right back down. Now, the more cuts you make, like you can see here, the more difficult it can be to line up, which is where our glue comes in. It's going to help us keep everything nice and neat. We want to make sure that this black square that we have is lined up on those four corners. That is going to help us make sure that we're gluing everything in place. All right, so make sure that you're gluing on the correct side. So notice I flipped it again. You don't want to glue on the wrong side. So once you have cut that, again, make sure that those edges for the square line up nice and neatly, and carefully glue this down so that the edges of your shape are touching the edges of that black square. Then do the same thing with that second one. Flip it over. Add your glue. Line it up again. They should be touching each other just barely. And that third piece, flip it, glue the correct side, line it up, and glue it down again. All right, so now you end up with that heart. See, that's why we only cut half the shape, because once we have that Notan design, that positive versus negative space, it creates the whole shape. Now the reason that we drew those edges was so that we could just cut one piece at a time, so we don't have so many pieces to keep up with. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my next shape. Carefully cutting out this organic kind of tentacle-y looking shape here. Notice I'm pivoting my paper, not my scissors as I cut. Makes it easier. All right, so yet again, line that paper up on those four corners. Take your glue stick, flip that paper over, make sure that you know where it's going to sit. Glue on the original side. And yes, I'm gluing on my white paper. It is purple right now, but my glue will dry clear, so it's not a big deal. Make sure that this is lined up correctly. And then glue your shape down. And mine actually goes off my paper just a touch. The bottom. That's okay. Just means I made a taller shape than maybe I should have, and that's okay. It's all good. All right, so my next shape, I'm going to go back up here to the top and do the same thing. All right, guys, so I'm going to finish this and I'm going to show you what it's going to look like as it's done. All right, guys, so I have all of my little edge pieces glued down. My last step here before having it finished is to glue this middle piece down. So to glue the middle piece down, I'm going to take it, flip it over very carefully so I'm not ripping anything, because I have very small pieces, edges that have been cut around. It would be very easy for this to tear. So you want to be very careful as you're gluing. I want to make sure that I'm getting glue everywhere. Again, remember the purple that I'm for my glue stick, it will dry clear. But then I'm going to line up all those edges nice and neatly. Flatten everything out, kind of massage that down into the paper. If I've done this correctly, all of my lines should kind of touch each other. And now I am finished and I have my Notan. If you have any pencil marks or anything like that that you need to erase, you can erase it. It can turn any way you want. I really like mine the way it was originally. If I want to, I can cut off some of the extra white paper on the sides to just kind of give it a slightly more finished look. All right, and there you have it. You have a finished Notan, and the cool thing about this is you can create this as detailed or as simple as you want. There are a lot of Notans that are created to, and they actually create images. So when you're looking at kind of those, some of them will create a much more difficult design. For instance, this is one. You can see kind of the person, Cheshire Cat, a little Alice in Wonderland theme. So really get creative with this. You can do as many as you want. I'd love to see your artwork, see what you guys have come up with. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.